What if I told you that the thing killing your closest relationships right now isn't a lie? It isn't a betrayal. It isn't a fight. It's something much quieter. Something you're probably doing right now and calling it strength. Stay with me, because this is going to be uncomfortable. There were two people who loved each other. Not perfectly, but genuinely. They had built something together, shared meals, shared laughter, shared silences that once felt comfortable. But somewhere along the way, the silences changed. She said something that hurt him once. He didn't respond, not because he didn't feel it, but because he told himself, if I stay quiet, I'm being the bigger person. And she noticed the silence, so she stopped asking questions. If he doesn't want to talk, I won't push. She called it respect. He called it peace. But it wasn't respect. And it wasn't peace. It was two people slowly building a wall and handing each other the bricks without saying a word. Here's what nobody tells you about silence. It doesn't feel like destruction. It feels like discipline. You think you're choosing your battles. You think you're protecting the relationship. But silence doesn't just swallow the argument. It swallows the person who needed to be heard. The silence always justifies itself. I didn't want to start a fight. It wasn't worth it. They should already know how I feel. That last one is where relationships go to die. Because love doesn't read minds. Friendship doesn't read minds. Even the people who know you best cannot love what you refuse to show them. When you decide that someone should already know, you stop giving them the chance to understand. And slowly, quietly, invisibly, you begin to resent them for not knowing something you never said. One day, it ended. Not with a scream, not with a door slamming, with a conversation that never happened. She packed her things while he sat in the other room. He heard every sound, the zipper, the footsteps, the pause at the door. And in that pause, there was still time. There was still space for a single sentence. But neither of them spoke. And that's the most haunting thing about silence. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't warn you when it becomes permanent. One day it's a choice, the next day it's a habit, and eventually it becomes the only language you two still share. Now, here's where it gets complicated, because silence isn't always the villain. Sometimes silence is sacred. Sometimes it's the only honest response to a moment too big for words. The problem isn't the silence itself. The problem is using it as a substitute for the things that actually needed to be said. There's a version of silence that protects, and there's a version that erases. The silence after a storm, that heals. The silence instead of the storm, that poisons. And most people don't realize which one they're choosing until they're standing in the ruins of something that looked fine from the outside. So I'm not going to tell you to speak more. I'm not going to give you a list of things to say. I just want to leave you with a question. Is there something you've been carrying in silence that was never meant to be carried alone? A word unspoken, an apology waiting, a truth that's been sitting in your chest so long, it started to feel like part of you. What if that silence isn't strength? What if it's just fear with better posture? I don't know what your silence looks like, but I think you do. If this reached something inside you, share it. Not because of the algorithm, but because somewhere, someone is carrying a silence that's slowly becoming a wall. Tell me in the comments, what's one thing you've been silent about for too long? You don't have to answer fully, even one word is enough, because sometimes the hardest words to say are the ones we type in a comment box at 2 a.m., and that's still a beginning.